What's up? It's Robert from Existence First, mental training for a modern world. In today's mental training, I'll be answering a question from one of our viewers. And the question is, what should I do if my addictions are keeping me from reaching my goals? I have a few things to say on this. The first one is, if you're allowing your addictions to keep you from reaching your goals, then you don't deserve those goals. That one you might need to let sink in, but it's a very deep and thought-provoking statement. Second, this issue is nothing new. It is a bit of a human tendency to kind of stray away from your goals. And this is because humans are not designed to achieve goals. Humans are designed to survive. And what does survival entail? Survival entails eating, being a part of a social group, and number 3, reproducing. And so the human brain, the human psyche, is a system that has been designed throughout evolution through trial and error passively. It wasn't created actively by somebody, much like a robot would be actively designed by some student in the engineering department at a university. It's not active, it's more passive, right? In the sense of whatever was successful for our ancestors, they then passed on the genetics to us. So what is this system? Well, it's the system of neurotransmitters and things like dopamine. When dopamine is released in your brain, you feel really good, and the brain releases that when we do those survival activities, such as eating, getting social approval, and reproducing or mating. And you should see now where I'm heading with this. This is actually the 3 most common addictions here that I've seen, at least, is eating food that you shouldn't be eating, kind of like junk food. Social approval, meaning addiction to social media and getting likes and comments and follows. And number 3, addiction to either sex or watching pornography. Now, all 3 of these, the reason that we have these addictions is because they're so closely related to these ancient survival behaviors. The only problem is that we're not living in that ancient, prehistoric environment where food is scarce, and so we should actually stuff ourselves every time we do kill an animal successfully, or we do discover berries and nuts in the forest or whatnot. Back then it was useful to kind of stuff our face with that food, but it's not useful in today's environment where there's a fast food joint on every corner in our city. Okay, number 2, social approval. When you're in the prehistoric era, evolving in these groups of, or you're living in these tribes of about 150 people is the estimate by scientists, it's very crucial to have that group's approval, right? If the group decides that they don't like you and you have to go off and live in a cave by yourself, you're not going to survive, and you're not going to pass on your genetics to anybody because you're not going to mate. So the brain is wired to be very sensitive to social approval, and that's why social rejection is so painful to many of us, right? It's because we have this system here that was designed to do exactly that, to feel pain when we're socially rejected and to feel pleasure when we are socially accepted. Now, this just gets on steroids when you introduce something like Facebook and Instagram, where you make one post and you could get, 1 million likes potentially. And I really wonder what it's like for these celebrities and their psychology. I don't know how they get along without a coach or of some kind, a psychology coach or a mind coach, because that stuff is just, it's like doing drugs, it fires off the dopamine so hardcore. Anyways, last one, sex and pornography, right? It should be obvious why people get addicted to something like that, because in prehistory, our ancestors who enjoyed those activities ended up producing children who then eventually produced us, right? And so we're inheriting those brain systems. I mean, if there was somebody in prehistory that they did not enjoy or had no desire to partake in mating and reproduction, like their genetics would have ended at that generation. That wouldn't be passed on. So, again, though, that's a mismatch for today's environment, because you take that from prehistory, caveman environment into current day and age where we have computers and internet, right? Where you can watch, these sexual acts over and over. Like that's really not a good match for the human brain, the prehistory brain. And so it's no wonder that people get addicted to that. So first of all, that's the context of why people experience these addictions. Okay, now it's a totally different question of how to fix it once you realize that you have some of these behaviors, or you're engaging in these behaviors that you don't want to. And you might think at first that's a question of psychology, but it's not. It's a question, I think, of economics, because it's a question of incentives, right? If you have a junk food addiction, or if you have an addiction to fast food drive-throughs, I would bet that you probably have some drive-throughs close to where you live. I mean, if you live on a farm in the middle of a rural area and there's no fast food restaurants within 60 miles, I would guess that you don't currently struggle with a fast food addiction. Like, it's your environment doesn't make it possible, right? And same with like pornography addiction. If you have a computer, that allows you to have this addiction. If you didn't have a computer, or if you didn't have a private space of your own where you could consume that material for extended periods of time, you probably wouldn't have that addiction. Now, people are going to take that and turn around and say, well, then I should get rid of my computer, right? Or I should move to a rural area, right? Well, it's not quite that simple, but you're right insofar as it's an issue of your environment and the structure of your environment providing certain incentives, right? So what you would want to do is hack your environment. The mistake people make is they try to muscle it through with their own willpower, but human willpower is very weak, and it's also a limited resource. So that's not a smart way to go. The better way to go is to use your prefrontal cortex, right, the most recently evolved part of your brain, intelligence, forethought, and planning, to hack your environment and design your environment in such a way where you are no longer incentivized to engage in those behaviors. And I guess that's a kind of a complex way of saying, you just got to change your environment. And one way you could do this is by going to, like, I don't know, support groups. So hanging around friends that don't engage in those behaviors. I mean, it sounds so silly, but it really is silly. If you think about it, it's really just a matter of designing your environment. Another strategy that has worked for me is you count the number of days that you do or don't engage in a behavior. Like if I'm trying to work out, I count the days in a row where I have successfully completed my workout. And if I've done that for, like, let's say 2 months straight, like, I'm feeling really good. And the perfectionist in me keeps that going. I don't stop. And I don't take a day off of my workout, because it's just absurd. It's like, come on, I've done it for 2 months straight. I can't do it for another day, 2 months and 1 day. So that's one way. That's sort of like a cognitive way to do it. It's not so much designing your environment, but what you could do is you could put a calendar on the wall and then put a check mark for every day that you do your workout, right? Or an example for me is, like, I follow a workout from a book, right? So it tells me how many sets and how many reps to do of each exercise. If I just go into the gym with no plan and I'm like, well, let's kind of see what I feel like working out today, like, it's not going to work. And that's a perfect example of providing the structure, instituting and implementing the structure that kind of makes it easy, right? That's the idea, is you want to make it easy. Okay, again, the human being was not designed to go out and be extremely successful and achieve goals and build skyscrapers and do all these amazing things. The human being is designed uh, to eat food, to run away if predators are chasing, to build social connections so that um, you get you benefit from the protection of a tribe. All of these things, that's what a human being is designed for. Now, why this emphasis on self-actualization, and why am I so into self-actualization and actually achieving big goals and things like that? I don't know, and I guess that's probably a video for another day. So let's stay focused on this topic and summarize really quickly so far what I've said. Actually, I think I'll end with a story, which is the summer after I graduated high school, I did not work. I was going to have a job, but when I applied a little late and there were no openings, right? So I stayed at my parents' house all summer long, not doing anything, just watching TV, and it was the worst summer of my life, right? And why was it so bad? Like, why didn't I go out and just get a different job? Well, I didn't really have the incentives there. Like, I didn't have to pay rent. I, um, I could just sit at home and do nothing if I wanted to. Like, there was food in the refrigerator. Like, my environment was designed in such a way where I was not sufficiently incentivized to engage in job-seeking behaviors. Obviously, after that summer, my brain kind of learned from observation very quickly that a lifestyle like that is not pleasurable. And so then that reversed the incentive structure. So I never did that again because I thought ahead of time, like, okay, you know, go to work, get a job or whatever. It keeps me moving, it keeps me active, it keeps me thinking, it's healthy for me. And so that's how I solved that problem, you know? So it comes down to like really creativity and designing. So human willpower is good. I mean, it shouldn't be avoided. Like, you should use your willpower, but work smart, not hard. You know, if you can kind of spend a few minutes sort of designing your day or designing your week, designing your environment, setting up a calendar, tracking how many days in a row you do a certain thing, then you start to change and morph those incentives, and the your streak of successful days in a row starts to become the new dopamine spike, right? The fact that you are eating healthy and you're seeing your weight decrease, or you're feeling cleaner and leaner, that's the dopamine spike that becomes your new reward, versus the dopamine spike of, in the first 5 seconds, tasting, you know, salty, high caloric, non-nutritional food. That used to be the dopamine spike. Now you do a new dopamine spike that doesn't happen in the first 5 seconds. It happens months later when you become healthier, lose weight. But that's just a matter of using your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that allows you to plan, right? Other animals do not have that. So you can't have, you know, a dog thinking like, well, a couple years from now, I think I'm going to become older, so I'm going to engage in these behaviors to, you know, a dog just can't think ahead like that, like the way that a human being can. So it's time to use the thinking part of our brain to make it easier on the emotional part of our brain to engage in certain behaviors this way or that way. So thank you for watching. If this was helpful, or if you have comments or questions, please engage in the comment section below. Write me other questions. I'll be happy to produce other videos for any questions that you all might have. And you can also shoot me a DM on Instagram with other questions. So thanks for watching. Think deeply and put your existence first.